Hey everyone, it's Stephanie Garcia, and this is the Art of Becoming series, where we talk all about the journey between where you are right now and where you want to be, and all the stuff that has to happen in between to get you there. If you're ready, let's get started.
Hello and welcome everyone to the podcast. Today I've got a guest that has been on the podcast a couple years ago. She's second or third episode. It's a really great episode for you to go back to and listen to. This woman is incredible. Since she's done the podcast, I've watched her over the last couple of years, because we met during the pandemic, doing some really incredible things with her career. I wanted to bring her back because I feel like she's going to speak beautifully to something that I know that I've struggled with, and I feel that many others are struggling with. And it's about learning to trust yourself when it comes to the journey of your life and where it's calling you to go, even when it's scary, even when it makes you feel like you're stretching. Maybe you've been doing something for a very long time, and now you're feeling called to change it up, and that scares you to death. Or things have been going really great for a long time, but now you're feeling called to go to a different level, or to another level, or do something different in your life. And again, it's making you feel very vulnerable. So without further ado, welcome again, Kristi.
Thank you. Intro was just as good second time around.
I think that, let's drop the facade of trying to be perfect.
That's right.
Drop the facade of, just let's be authentic. I'm going to be authentic. I mess up. I forget to hit the record button. And you know what? I heard someone say that when you have to record it a second time, it's going to it's because it's meant to be something much deeper. So we're going to be.
Amen.
So, all right. So yes, we met during the pandemic. Before that, you were an actress. And then during the pandemic, you started moving into more, well, maybe you transitioned before that time, but you were doing more embodiment work. And now you released something really beautiful.
Thank you.
That I'm really excited to talk to everybody about. But first, before we do that, you introduce everybody to who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Kristi Salerno. I am, I guess, entrepreneurial spirit. I like to try a lot of things. And right now I am working in somatics. I am a somatic counselor. I work with clients one-on-one, and I teach classes and love to help people get into their bodies and in touch with their deeper truth and heal from that place. And I also am a singer-songwriter, and that's kind of the new chapter, part 2, that I have sort of re-entered into at this point in my life, at a time when, probably I would never have imagined at my younger self ever thinking that I would do that at this age. I'm 45. And but here we go. This has been the journey to return to like my heart, which really has always been connected to music.
I love the previous version that I didn't record. You talked about reclaiming this.
Yes.
I love when you say you reclaimed it, because this is something you did years ago.
Yeah, this is
of spirit.
Yeah, this was actually probably my first art, was singing. It's the first thing that I did as a little kid, and I guess what I got attention for as a kid, and did a bunch of musicals and things like that. And that was my first dream, was Broadway and a lot, all of that. And, it's really interesting, and maybe some of your listeners can relate, but sometimes I know this was true for me, but the dream that's the closest to your heart is also often the path that has the most to teach you. And for me, there was a lot of obstacles on that path, and a lot of, I'll say, trauma that I encountered along that path, to the point where when I was around 26 years old, I actually gave it up. I retired, quote unquote, from singing, and truly thought I was done. So yeah, this is really a 19, 20 year comeback, like hiatus, that I took from this part of myself. So yeah, this is this is what it is, I guess, coming back to who I really am.
I think we all are coming back to who we are in some
Mhm.
way, shape, or form. I think the dream that is closest to your heart is also the one sometimes that you have the most resistance to.
Yes.
Sometimes. Um,
True.
yeah, but the essence of it is it's interesting because I think into my own life how I mean it sounds like you embraced it straight off the bat, then took a hiatus. I know that I avoided it and I
Mm,
tried different things to avoid it. But
yeah.
the one thing that I'm seeing in your life and in my life is a through line. There's still something, the essence of it never quite leaves you. It doesn't matter what form you will take, it always will swing back around to you. And it's
Mm,
almost like that call is always going to be on your heart, and you can try to avoid it and try to muffle it, but it's still going to call you and call you and call you. So
yes.
feel like even when you went to different paths in your life, do you feel like music always called you, or do you feel like it just took another form and you were okay with that?
There were times where I thought it took another form, but if to be truthful and honest, it was a call that never let me alone. And I tried everything to get it to shut up. Everything. I mean, I was so certain that I had left it in the past, that I was truly done, that I had done what I wanted to do with it. Like everything in my brain, my logic was certain of that. It's so funny. And being a somatic counselor, someone who works with the body, like I know that the truth is really in our body. But of course, I wasn't listening to that. Right. I was listening to some of, I had certain things I would listen to, but that piece was so connected to so many painful things that I just didn't want anything to do with it. I really didn't. So, you know, for 2 decades, I didn't listen to it. I mean, I would let that part of me out here and there. Like, okay, I'll sing backup with your show that you want me to sing backup on, or I'll, sing around a campfire, or I'll do a little this, that. But it wasn't something I could fully own again for a long
Mm,
time. Took me a long time. Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like um, for you, you weren't ready to go back into the pain of it.
Hmm.
But it also sounds a little bit like you did go on a journey that maybe made your music richer.
Mm.
I think sometimes our younger selves with our dreams, life really hasn't, it, I want to say, enriched it in some way. Sometimes you start off with it a little bit, your dream and your call, and then you go and you experience life and you have more to add to it. Do you feel like that's been the journey? Do you feel
Oh,
like you have more to add to it? You're more yourself now with it than you were before?
yeah. Yeah. I feel like you're speaking exactly what happened. You know, um, I think, I know when I was young and I was pursuing this thing, I didn't really know who I was. And so much of my way of surviving in the world was people pleasing and, who do you want me to be? And what's going to get me the most, whatever, success? Or, how do they do it? Let me do what they're doing. And, I think that's a natural part of growing up and, trying to find your own voice. But I was so distanced from who I really was and what I really wanted to say. And I believe with all of my heart that the last 20 years were absolutely necessary to bring me back to not even back, but to bring me for the first time, maybe to my true voice, to what I really want to say. And I'll never forget, like when I completed the song that I released, when I finished it, recording and all of that, I felt a feeling I'd never felt before, which was like, wow, I love this so much. I don't care what anybody thinks. I love it so much. Like, this is me. This is what I want to say. And I'd never felt that before in any place, any art form.
Mm.
And that even though I had, there were moments of deep regret for all the time that I missed out on doing it. Um, like I really have no regrets because of the journey, like who it brought me to. It brought me to my true self, like this journey, I really feel that. So like what you're saying is absolutely true. And I don't know if you feel that same way with your journey, that sometimes we take these detours because there's a part of us there's a part of us that needs to grow to be able to hold whatever it is that we want to bring.
100%. 100%. I feel like who I am now can handle the dream a lot more, even though there's a lot of fear there.
Yeah.
I can hold the dream a lot more now. I have a better perspective. Whereas before, I felt that if I had followed the dream, I would have buckled.
Yeah.
And now it sounds like you had the courage to follow your dream. And yes, you did get hurt. I think a lot of the fear for me at the beginning was so much fear from what I perceived that I didn't even in. You jumped in, you got hurt, and you said no more. And it's a natural impulse, right? When you're getting, I do remember the path that I did take. There was still pain in that path too.
Yeah.
Still pain in that path, even though I was trying to avoid my dream a bit, avoid that not getting it. I still went in a different direction and still felt the pain. So pain can happen everywhere.
That's so true. Mm-hmm.
So I do know that feeling also with the second path I took. I was like, and stop. Natural thing for us to want to avoid pain. It's a natural thing that when you're getting hurt, you want it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think as we get older, we start to think, yeah, but you can't hurt us that much now. Yeah, you could, but not enough to get us to stop. And that's the difference with getting older, I think, and being on your journey. I think the journey knocks you up enough to get back onto it, and then you get back there. So let's talk a little bit about. Now I know you said you resist a call, so let's take it back a couple of years.
Yeah.
So being the actress.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long you did that before you switched into embodiment and doing the live streams during COVID. That's when I connected with you.
Mm-hmm.
And back then I was like, this woman, she's got something. I got to talk to her. I don't even know what I need to talk to her about. I just literally during COVID decided I'm going to bring the podcast out. And I was just thinking, you know what? It doesn't make sense to me, but I feel like I need to speak to people that I find that are interesting and there's something to them. So I messaged you and you came onto the podcast and you were doing the embodiment work.
Yeah.
And then you've been doing the embodiment work for a while and you've really embraced that.
Mm-hmm.
And did the call to get back into music start coming to you? When do you feel like did you hear it back in the pandemic or did you take a little bit of time and then?
It came in waves. I don't feel like it ever truly let go of me, but there were times like once I put it down, I mean, like it just kind of was always in the very back row of the internal theater inside of me. Like, hey, I'm still here, just eating popcorn in the back row. But there are times where it would get really loud, or louder, where I couldn't ignore it as much. And usually, I don't remember specifically necessarily the moments, but anytime, certainly when I would see pieces of art or musicals or things that really moved me, I would miss that part of myself that wanted to sing with them, and it felt like I was, it was painful, it was like, it reminds me of like an athlete who, dreams of the major leagues, but gets injured and then sits out and then can't watch a baseball game for the rest of their life. It's kind of like that. Like I wasn't letting myself, I would avoid music. I would avoid concerts. I would avoid musicals, but I wasn't really conscious of that. Because when I would see those things, this part of me would be like, yeah, like you like this, and then that would bring up pain. And then I have to face that. And so it kind of was like this constant avoidance, but really what really turned it a couple of years ago when I couldn't ignore it anymore. Man, it was actually a specific artist whose show I went to. It was a very intimate, small space. And she was singing music that I had never heard this genre before. And it was very soulful, very spiritual, very, I could fit it in any category. And there was something so freeing about that. And this part of me was like, oh, there's something here. There's something I have to follow here. And I just started following her and I started following her journey. And I would go to her shows and then I would go to her little workshops online. And then yeah, the biggest moment happened when my dog passed away about a year and a half ago. And that was kind of the moment. I had signed myself up for this vocal retreat that I had a lot of resistance to going to. And my little doggie was really sick and I didn't think I'd be able to make it to the retreat because she was going to die any day. And if I left, I was terrified that she would pass, but she passed like days before the retreat. And I knew that was a sign for me. Like she wanted me to go. And so I went and I was so sad the whole time I was there. But it was like, there was something that clicked. There was something that was like, just take the next step. Okay, now take the next one, And it was part of my healing from that grief, honestly. Walking one step at a time back to this art.
You know what was coming through to me when you were speaking is that gnawing pain of not doing. And I think sometimes the pain of not doing is worse than the pain that anybody else can inflict onto you.
Yes.
Judgment. And
yes.
Pain that lingers and it's in your soul and you can always feel it. And it comes in waves of like jealousy and again, avoidance, like you were saying. And you almost can't live your life in the pleasures of the things that you desire because it causes pain. And that pain is worse. That pain of regret of not doing is worse than anything anyone else can give to you.
You are so right. That is so wise.
What was that moment where, you were aware of it, but then you had the courage to take the first step and do? Because we can get a lot of awareness of like, oh, this is something I want to do. Like, oh, I know I want to do it, but there's still that fear. And it does take courage to take that first step, especially if that first step is messy, because it's it's not going to be perfect. You're going to run away, especially when it gets messy.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I think I was, this is what I think had happened is because I don't think there was a specific moment where I was like, oh, I'm doing this until after I'd been doing it for a little while. Because what I did, this is how my mind works. I was just like fucking around. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna see about this little songwriting course. Oh, okay. I'm going to sit in the background and just whatever, learn a little something. Oh, I'm going to pick up my guitar and just see if I can start learning it a little bit. But I wasn't letting myself, like, I wasn't in full awareness of like, I'm doing this because I got to do this. I was still in denial. I was just like doing it for fun, doing it because I also, it was such a tender period because I was so fragile and so scared that I couldn't even admit to myself that I was starting to take steps in that direction until I'd taken enough steps to, well, honestly, the moment, if there was a moment when I went, okay, I'm going to keep going forward, it was actually a huge moment of very intense grief. I happened to stumble upon a video on YouTube of a woman singing. I don't know if you know Kate Bush's song, This Woman's Work. Okay. It's one of my favorite songs. It's so phenomenal. And this woman was singing it on YouTube with a full orchestra, and it was so brilliant. She was the most phenomenal vocalist I think I've ever seen in my life. And it pierced me like through my heart, through my back, like to the wall. And I sat and watched that over and over and over again, probably 25 times, and just bawled my eyes out. And it was all of this grief of you quit this, you let this go. That was 20 years of time you let pass. How could you do that? Like there was all of that messy regret, grief, pain. And I had to feel that. And it was horrible. It was horrible. And I that is what I'd been running away from all those years, I think. Like, yes, the pain of what happened to me back in my 20s, but more so every year added another layer of regret. And the more years that went by, the more I didn't want to feel that. And the more years that would go by, and the more I didn't want to feel that. So after 20 years, that was the moment that just like nailed me through the heart, that I honestly had to have that moment to heal, to move at all. And that's when I could finally feel, oh, this is part of me. I have to do this. I actually want this. But I couldn't feel that until I got some of that grief out of the way. You know what I mean? And that regret.
I do. It's like it's the threshold that you cannot avoid. The
Yeah.
threshold you cannot avoid.
Mm.
It's interesting. It's kind of like we have the dreams, we have the desires, and we will watch other people do it, and we kind of like on the other side going,
Yes.
what are you doing? Or
Yeah.
you'll take that class, or you'll play around, or like you said, fuck around with it. But it doesn't really move you into it. Because you're just kind of tiptoeing around it for a long time. And again, you can move into doing other jobs and other work that is kind of aligned or close to it, but not quite. But you have to go through the threshold. Yes, you're afraid. Yes, you're jealous. Yes, you're scared. Yes, this is something that is completely 100% you, and you have to claim it. And there's a threshold you have to go through. You have to move through the fear. And all those really messy, uncomfortable, horrible feelings. Have to move through them. And I'm gonna just want to be authentic here and say, I know there's many that I haven't even gone through. There's many places where I look and I see, yep, tiptoeing. Totally know that I'm tiptoeing. People do the thing that I really, really hard, like in my heart and soul want to do. Seeing the version of seeing them as the version that I would love to be. And still, yes, it's still for some reason scary to go through the threshold to claim it. But it sounds to me, when you went through that threshold and that part of you left, something else emerged, your true self emerged to the point that you could create this thing and it not scare you. And I will tell you, I know you went through a threshold because when I heard the song, it's clear, energetically, completely clear. There's a resonance to it that connected to your soul. And there is no way you would have been able to create that resonance that others are now creating videos on, that others are loving the song, if you didn't clear all of that in order to do it. I bow to you on that because I know that that is not an easy thing to do. And it's not that people cannot do it. Anybody who's listening to this, watching this, you can absolutely do this too. But I'm going to say that, yes, it will be challenging. It can be. And you can touch that part of yourself. And I'm looking at it going, yep, I see it. I know.
Well, hey, speaking from that, first of all, thank you so much for saying that about my song. That means like the world to me. And hey, I tiptoed around it for 20 years. That's a long time to be like dee, 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 in the back row. I'm just going to be here looking from, so if I can come back from it after 20 years, anybody can. And, you're right, not without facing the feelings and the stuff, the junk, the shadow that I stuffed down for all those years, I do think you're right. There is like, if there's a price to pay, which I don't believe in that, but if there's a price to pay, it's just the price of what it has cost you to not do what it is that your heart calls you to do, right? Emotionally, what it has cost you. And for me, that was the moment of feeling what it cost me. And I didn't know that because I'd been protecting myself by numbing it and distracting myself and doing everything else so well that nobody could tell there wasn't anything else under it. I couldn't even tell that there was something else, you know? And so I'm so grateful for that moment. If there's something I do well, it's dive hard into emotion. Like I will feel the thing. When it's time to feel it, I'll feel it and I'll feel it all the way. But that's something I had to kind of learn to do because it wasn't, that wasn't something I was taught or learned from example. But through the embodiment work, again, this is all why it's connected. Through the embodiment work, I learned to trust my body and I learned to trust that the emotions are part of the healing. They're just moving through to heal you. So those things that we're so afraid of, when we're so afraid of the call of our soul, the fear is not of the call necessarily. I think the fear is of what I'm going to have to feel in order to take the steps that the call is pulling me towards. Like I'm going to have to feel the regret. I'm going to have to feel what I lost along the way. You know what I mean? Or whatever stories I've created about missing out or whatever it is. But then, yeah, you're so right. Once I felt that and I let it pass through me, there was a lightness. There was okay. And yes, and now I'm going to take another step, you know?
Yeah.
And I've never felt that since, honestly. Like I let that feeling move through me and I really haven't felt that like, oh my God, I missed all this time. Like I've never felt that since. I'm like, no, this was actually part of, I needed those years,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It calls you to meet yourself. But I think the dream calls you to meet your true authentic self that many of us are so disconnected from. And yeah, we never learned, but I don't think that there's been a time in history where people have had the opportunity to do that. They didn't have the time to do that. They didn't have the resources to do that. Honestly, our generations are the first generations to really have the luxury of it. So it makes sense that this would be new. I would hope and pray that in generations after, this would not be an issue. But when talking about cost, I think the thing that it really costs you is all that baggage, all those identities, all the stuff that we put on top of it. It's going to cost you all those masks that you've put on and all those ways that you've chosen to hide. And there's a part of us that fights against that. And it's like, I don't want to let it go because it's something I'm familiar with. And we falsely think that it is our identity. And it's not our identity, not at all. It's just who we think we are. And so the cost of owning the dream and embracing the dream and claiming it is the cost of letting all of that go. Who we are. And I think we're so afraid of that. But again, it's because who are we without it? Who are we without it?
Oh, yeah.
And still, for some reason, it's hard because it feels like some kind of comfy blanket that, no, you're tired of it. You know, you don't want it.
But familiar, right? It's like the devil, you know. It's like, it's familiar, feels safe, even if it doesn't feel good, you know?
Yes. There's a safety there, especially when you've had to, what got you here isn't going to get you there, is what they say. So yes, you had to do what you had to do to get through. Had to morph and become the person to get through all of those things, but you don't need to do it anymore. You need to you can let it go. You can be safe as you. And I think that the person that when you've gone through this journey and you're on this space that, me and Kristi are talking about, there's a resilience here that even if somebody were to come at you the same way that they came at you when you were younger, there's a part of you now that's kind of like the big sister that's not letting that happen again. Especially if you've done the work of healing and feeling.
Yeah.
And you've done all the somatic work that kind of clears through some of that stuff. What would be you were saying, okay, so music was something that started your life in your life,
Mm-hmm.
moved into acting,
Mm-hmm.
it moved into movement, and now the music that you create also has movement. When we did this first recording, you were talking about how you feel like it's kind of always been in there. What is the thread, do you think? What part of
Mm.
this is you?
Mm. Mm. The thread that connects it
That
all.
connects it all, yeah. Because you were saying it's interesting that
Mm-hmm.
movement is kind of in all of it. And
Yeah. Yeah. I do think there's an element, if at the most basic level, I do think the thread is healing. Um, what comes through me, even musically, has a healing element to it. I feel it for me, I write my songs for me. It's like what I need to hear, what I need to be told to me. And I found that, like, oh, that's really interesting because that's also how I teach. I'm always teaching what I need to either learn or what I am learning, what I am healing through. Um, so I do feel like that's the thread that connects it, is that you can call it healing, you can call it evolving, or um that continuous growth and expansion, and sort of conscious raising, process that we're all in, whether we know it or not. And and for me, it's just a very conscious process, and that connects everything that I think that I tend to be interested in.
I think we all start off in our life, we have this essence of who we are, and then we kind of go and explore it, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of moves in. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that nothing's lost.
Mm.
And what advice would you give to somebody who is feeling like, okay, they've been doing something maybe for 20 years and now they're feeling called to do something different.
Yeah.
Now, they knew they had something that they loved to do when they were younger. They've been doing something else and now they're feeling called to go back to it. What advice would you give to somebody?
Mm. I would say to, first of all, listen to that little call, and to know that listening to it doesn't mean you have to blow up your current life. I think sometimes we don't listen to the voice because we're like, well, I guess I have to quit my job and move to another country and da da da. And, we get overwhelmed. And I think it's actually, if we can look at, okay, how can I incorporate just one step forward in this little call, one step, and then the next week, another step, and then another one. And then before you know it, those steps really start adding up. And also, it's your soul call. So once you take one step in that direction, the universe just wants to give you all this support. That's been my experience. Like, I took one step, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing, like, these people are coming into my line of sight, and this opportunity, or this person, or someone sends me something. There's just so much synchronicity when we're on that soul path. So I think taking it slow, saying yes to it, but taking it slow. You don't have to go 100 miles an hour towards it. I think it's actually really important to go slow and to titrate that turn, because um a our nervous system needs that grace as we change, and because those steps are going to bring up stuff, they're going to bring up some emotion and some things for us to look at. So I think, taking little baby steps, and then also I would say having some place where you have support, where you can talk about this with somebody, or somebody knows about it. Because it's too easy to be a turtle and go back into our shell and go back into what's, safe. But if you tell one person you really trust who supports you, they're going to ask you about it, and they're going to want to encourage you, you know? And I think that piece is super important. I'm lucky to have a husband who really supports me and who really believes in me and wants me to take the next step. So I can't hide from him. You know what I mean? But I think it can be a husband, a friend, a therapist, a work person, a person at our job, but that's another piece I would say.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you said the titrating part,
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot of the time when we first start off and
Mm-hmm.
younger in our lives, teenage, in our 20s, even in our 30s,
Yeah.
or even in your 40s, honestly, it doesn't really matter when it happens. The reason you're going into your shell and hiding and running away is because something affected you and hurt you, and you didn't have the tools to know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Absolutely.
the nervous system got a hit and got afraid and then ran away
Mm-hmm.
and ran more into yourself. When you're coming back and following something new, you do have to, and there's going to be fear there, you have to take it slow. You have to remember that, yeah, and give yourself so much grace and love.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
is going to take a process of getting to know that side of yourself, but also being a friend to yourself that maybe you didn't have back then, or
Yeah.
back then a support to yourself that you didn't have back then when you were going through those experiences. But
Yes.
also for you, Kristi, like you haven't stopped doing the somatic work. You haven't stopped being a counselor for or the coach for other people.
Yeah.
This is something that you've also chosen to explore in conjunction with that. And I think when you're feeling called to do something new, you don't have to, like you said, implode.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
can be added to your life.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be a but or getting rid of it. It can be an and.
That's right.
Try this as well.
That's right. I think that's a huge piece for me. I think me in my 20s would have been like, well, I'm just going to drop everything I'm doing and go do this other thing. And that would have led to a lot more stress, financial, emotional, all kinds of stress. And it's just not necessary. And it's not really supportive, because if you've built a life that supports you, then keep that. And then what you're doing is just gently adding this other thing. And over time, maybe you pull back on some of that other stuff that you're doing, but you'll know, you can trust yourself that you'll know when that is, or what that will look like when the time comes. um I know for me, part of the challenge of changing directions or adding this other piece back in, a lot of us do this where we think 10 steps ahead instead of one. And when we think 10 steps ahead, we go, oh my gosh, well, yeah, but if I'm doing that, then how am I going to fit that into my current life? I can't be a professional singer and be a blah, blah, blah that I'm doing. And then I'd have to quit this and this, this, this. And then we just create this overwhelm to where we just go, well, I can't do it. And that's not it. We go, can I do one thing? Can I take one step? Can I practice a song? Can I pick up my guitar today? And that transformation for me has been the most hugely impactful, going from someone who used to think 10 steps ahead to just one. And honestly, I'm astounded by how much, not to toot my own horn, but how much I accomplished with just one step at a time. Like, I look back and I'm like, oh wow, that this whole year I've recorded, 4 songs. I have one that I let put out. I have, a whole new brand, like music thing that I'm sending out to people. Like, there's just so many things that I did that I'm like, wow, that's a lot. But if you told me a year ago that I had to do all of that, right? Like this week, I'd be like, no way. I can't, no, never mind. I'm not going to sing. You know what I mean? So it's literally just like, what's the one thing in front of you? That's it.
And you can never know what that road's going to be. Our mind
No.
to look ahead and see worst case scenarios. And I
Yeah,
think let yourself go that far ahead, you would have seen one road, but in reality, it was a whole other one.
that's right.
So
That's
I have
right.
no idea what the road could take. So I always like
Yeah.
to the headlights on the car. You really can't see that far ahead, but you
Ooh,
just,
I love that visual.
yeah, you have to trust that the road is there. You can only see so far, and you just got to go one spot at a time and just keep going. If you saw everything at night,
Oof.
you out.
Yes.
Enough of a reason for you not to want to go. And
Yes.
so you do have to just take it as far as you can see it, but try not
Mhm.
to go too far to the place where you're wanting to talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the process of creating your song? Because we talked
Yeah.
about getting you to there. Once you actually start walking down the path, that's another journey in its own self. So how has
Mhm.
that grown you? You're now doing 4 songs. I imagine you still get more. But
Mhm.
what was the process of creating one song? How did that grow you? How did you get yourself to, okay, now 2, 3?
Yeah. Well, first it was just creating little ditties that I honestly had no pressure on. I had no plan to record anything. So it was just kind of like my free space just to mess around. And that was really important for me to have that space and it still is really important to me to just be able to make a bad song and, not put any pressure on it that it has to do anything or become anything. Um, and then, you know, maybe my 15th or whatever song, I started thinking, okay, well, if this one I really like and I really want to see what I can do with this one, And my husband was really encouraging, and he has, his best friend is a producer, and he basically was like, let's just mess around, let's bring in a song and just record it. And um that process to me was a hugely healing process. So scary and so healing. Um, so you asked me about the process of creating a song to record. I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
No, it's a whole thing because
Yeah.
again, when you're starting to actually take the steps into getting back to the dream and claiming it again,
Yeah.
you start meeting yourself there.
Yeah.
Now you start meeting more stuff comes up. This is
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
but it's such a rich process, and it's exhilarating at the same time. So
Hmm.
yeah, talk about that process and how
Yeah.
what have you gained from that process when it came to yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, that first song that I recorded, the first song I recorded, I was terrified. I thought, oh my gosh, he's not going to like my voice. He's not going to want like working with me. He's worked with so many people and I'm this little whatever nobody. And, here's my little baby song that has, I don't know what I'm doing. I kept saying that. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And yet, this little voice inside of me was also gaining strength at the same time that was like, yes, you do. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. And so both of those voices were happening at the same time. And I remember, I went in, we did all the recording of the vocals, and then, he sent me back a version of everything that I'd asked for. And, it was just kind of like everything but the kitchen sink. And he wanted me to give him, basically I was supposed to give him direction where to take it. And I remember when I got that first version back and I was like, oh no, like this isn't what I want it to sound like. And oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. What do I say to him? If I say anything, he's going to be upset with me. I can't, it was just all this like shame and self-deprecation and I can't do this. And wanting to give up, wanting to just be like, oh, I can't do it. Never mind. And so it was like the next step of initiation of like, no, now you get to use your voice to ask for what you want and to declare it and to own it. And so, working back and forth with the producer to create the sound that I wanted was its own entirely just full healing process, because it was literally step by step me claiming my voice, me owning that I knew what I wanted and could ask for it and could get it. And God bless him. He was so patient with me and so kind and just egoless and just so willing to take it at my pace. And it ended up being so healing. And so that song was the first one. And then the next one I did was Ooh Yeah Yay, which is the one I ended up releasing.
Mhm.
And so I went into Ooh Yeah Yay. That process was so much more confidence and just trusting myself and asking for what I wanted. I mean, I asked for insane instruments and sounds on that song. As I'm sure you can tell, there's so much going on.
Like well together, honestly. It does.
Thank you.
Has its own rhythm and its own life and its own soul.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exactly how it feels to me. Like these songs feel like, especially Ooh Yeah Yeah, maybe because it's been fully birthed into the world, but it feels like it's its own thing. It's its own sentient being and it has its own journey and I get to birth it and then it goes into the world and it's doing its thing, you know? And that process is like it's the coolest. I love it so much. But yeah, that from the first song to the second song was like a night and day experience for me.
But you had to clear all of that stuff to be able to be a
Yeah.
channel for it.
Yeah. Yes.
And
That's
that is
right.
a cool way of saying it. But truth is that we're all spiritual beings and we're all channels for something else to come through us.
That's
But if
right.
it's not clear, then we put all of our gunk and junk on it. But I'm
100%.
saying that it's an initiation because yes, when you're following it and you're taking, I think maybe, I wonder if that's the part that scares us the most. Is
Mm.
that when we do take it's enough to get through the resistance and threshold to claim the dream, but then you have to take the steps on the dream, all of the process of meeting yourself.
True.
Love how you were speaking about the initiation of that because it is an initiation. It's not like you're gonna have the dream and it's just gonna pop up.
Mm-hmm.
You have to become the version of you that can hold it.
Yes.
So you going through all that grief was just one part of it. Then
Yes.
you had to go through claiming your voice.
Yes.
But also what I thought was really interesting is you said that you said, I don't know what I'm doing. I
Mm-hmm.
the two things that come up. I don't know how, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm.
And but what if you do? What if you do? And you have to
Right.
it's
Yeah.
such a walk of faith with yourself.
Oh my gosh. So much, so much. And really, in those moments, those were the two paths on offer, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. Or that tiny voice that was like, trust yourself. You can do this. Trust yourself. And you get to choose, right? And like I chose, I trust myself. I know I have a vision. I can hear this song, what I want it to be. And I'm just gonna take that step, right? Towards it. And of in a way, and there is a lot of truth to I don't know what I'm doing in that, yeah, I've never done this before. I've never created this song before. I've never, worked with this person or whatever. And that's a honestly, that's a beautiful thing because in the when you get to the end of yourself is when magic can happen, right? It's when like the divine comes through. It's when you get to be a channel for the thing. And I think, I think that's my favorite part of the creation process is I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know how, if anyone's going to like it. I don't know, I'm at the edge of me and I get to meet, for me, like that's where I meet God. That's where I meet spirit. It's like, show me the way, you know, let's go.
Stop and something else starts,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And it's that beautiful co-creation process.
Yes.
And the whole I don't know what I'm doing is nothing has gone wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right? I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to give it a go. Right? I don't know how, but I gotta trust that something else inside of me does.
That's right.
And it is a spiritual journey on that. It's a beautiful thing. I will say though, 20 years ago, do you think you would have been able to handle that?
No,
No.
absolutely not. I think I mean, one of the things that happened that was so not traumatic for me, but that turned me off to the whole process was working with a producer who had a vision for me that I just didn't have but I didn't have my own. So I kind of went along with her sound and her idea for me. but then I had no passion for it. And I didn't like the music that we made. And that was all because I couldn't trust myself. I didn't know even where to resource trust within myself. So yeah, no, I don't think I could have done that 20 years ago.
There's something about maybe releasing the guilt that we have for letting time pass, because the version of us now can stand again for that version of ourselves before. And it's interesting how you said, okay, you had that issue with the producer 20 years ago, told you who you were. And here you are at 45, telling who you are. And that was why also at the beginning of this this interview, I don't want us to introduce you. I don't want to tell you who you are. I want you to announce who you are to the world. I don't want to put labels on you. And I think that's important for everybody. And I really feel like that's where the world is going now. Before, been so conditioned. And again, we're the first generation that really gets to say who the hell we are.
That's right.
That has not been a blessing or a privilege to the generations before us. Up until this point, we've lived in a world where the world told us who we are. The world told us what part we played. Now we get to define it for ourselves. And it makes sense that would feel scary.
Yeah.
It makes sense that would be something that feels very unfamiliar. That makes sense. We're all kind of going through it the same way, right?
Yeah.
So we're all kind of dealing with the same experience of, who am I if I'm not who the world says I am?
Right.
Right. So let's talk about the moment that you decided to release a song. Is there another threshold? Now you got to share it with the world.
Yep.
That experience.
Yeah. Oh man.
You recorded songs all day and never showed anybody but the people you felt safe with. What would it like to put it out in the world and be like, hey, this is me. This is my debut. I'm not going to be. What was that like?
That was, well, first of all, it was incredible. I had to work up to it. I did some smaller little gatherings of listenings with people I trusted. And, it helped to get that like positive feedback from smaller groups of people. But then, the next step for me was really, I didn't want to release it into a void. I wanted people I knew and who loved me to really be able to hear it. So I did a lot of self-promotion, and there was another initiation and another threshold, right? It was all of those little voices that keep me small, that are like, who do you think you are? And they heard enough from you already? And you're going to talk about this again. You're going to promote yourself again. All those voices that are trying to protect me, but are trying to get me to be quiet, were very present. But I think this is age and experience. My inner wisdom knew we're going to do it anyway. Like, we're going to tell people, we're going to inform people about what's happening and about what you're offering, and they can take it or leave it. That's the thing. Nobody has to listen, but yeah, but I reached out. I sent emails to friends. I asked for, people to post on their Instagrams and their social media. I asked for what I wanted. I asked for the support I wanted. I had a group of 20 people who I sent emails to and asked for specific things. I sent newsletters, and I was like doing my own guerrilla marketing. And I just knew that this song for me deserved to be heard, and I wanted it to be heard. And that was probably scarier. All of the asking for help and support, that was scarier than actually releasing it. Releasing it felt like like an exhale. And then honestly, just so much joy getting to experience the feedback and people's support, and just watching it have its own life. Yeah, it's been incredible and so healing, when I first made that song, I was like, well, it has a point of view. It's not, people will love it or people will really not like it. It's not kind of in the middle. And it really, because it felt like this is so me, there was a definite aspect of feeling really naked and revealed. And I definitely got plenty of like, oh, this is not what I expected from you, you know?
Hey,
Uh,
that is not something you expected.
yeah, yeah,
Correct.
yeah. I think I look more like, indie artist, guitar and voice vocals, and this was a much bigger thing. But yeah, but it was so, so great. And I'm just still basking in like how wonderful it felt to be heard as me,
I think even with the marketing of it, it didn't feel like it was marketing. It really,
Mm.
it felt
Mhm.
like you were sharing,
Mhm.
just sharing you. Just,
Yeah.
it didn't
Thank
come
you.
off in any way that was pushy or like, I need something from you. It was more of a, hey, it felt to me a little bit more like a debut.
Mm.
It felt like a debut. And your
Thank
whole
you.
energy when I saw you come out with this music, it just felt like a shift. And I remember
Mm.
I heard you were coming up with the song and I sent you a message and I said, you know what? Yes. It feels like a yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
You just, and I never knew that you
Uh-huh.
did music before. Never knew that. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised to know that this was something from you before, but it
Yeah.
felt like something that was so right. And I don't know, it just right now, but what I've been watching on your Instagram, it just feels like you're so grounded in who you are.
Mm.
Maybe that's because you had to go through the threshold of releasing all that guilt.
Yeah.
But I feel like you are just, it feels like you've arrived in some,
Oh,
feels like you arrived. And I don't know if that's
thank you.
from what I'm feeling and receiving, it feels like you've arrived.
Thank you. I feel that. I actually feel that. And not in a like, like I'm, got all the money and all the things now. It's not like that. It's not in the ego at all. It feels uh, like you can just be who you are and do what you love and
Mhm.
not have to jump through hoops, be a certain way so people will like it, show up in XYZ way. Like it's honestly the journey of healing so much of this stuff and just living to the age I'm at now. It just feels like, yeah, I love myself enough. I'm worthy now. I feel that now. I was worthy before, but I didn't feel that. Now I feel it. And I don't, it's awesome to have people love and support you and give you, have to have fans, I guess. But it's nothing can touch how I feel about me. And that's what's so great. Like I feel great about me.
Mhm.
I love what I'm creating. And I think that's the biggest shift for me now versus a decade or two ago is that so much of what I was doing before was like, is this right? Is this how you do it? Do you like it? Do you like me? And my God, is that exhausting? It's so exhausting.
It's awesome.
Oh my God. It's the worst. The
Yeah.
worst. And to be like, you know what? This is it. This is what it is. Take it
Mhm.
or leave it. And I love you either way. That's the difference. Like that's the arrived feeling, you know?
Yeah, we're always looking for that success or that arrive, but I think those are the moments when you are giving that gift to yourself of being who you authentically are, and giving yourself the desire, like meeting your own desires,
Yeah.
meeting your own expectations, meeting your own longings that you
Yes.
can give for yourself. And I think that that is the arrived feeling. That is the success, is when you're
Yes.
to yourself.
That's right.
Um, and do you feel like you've somehow connected to that version of yourself 20 years ago and she's kind of melted away and now it's you? That's what it seems like.
Yeah. She's held a lot of my hardest moments, right? And my biggest traumas. And so a lot of my healing has been around like that age and that time in my life. And God, I just have so much compassion for her. It makes me think of so, all women in their early 20s who you're just, you're so precious and you're so incredible and lovely and shiny and you have so much to offer. But at the same time, like there's so much, like for me, there was so much like, I need to be seen. I need you to like me. I need to know that I need you to tell me that I'm good enough. And it like breaks my heart, It's kind of like what motivates you. You were talking earlier about the photography, like when, watching the younger generations not know who they are and their value and to place it on trivial things, right? It hurts because I've been there and I know, and it sucks. And I just want to like take that from them. I just want to like, don't waste your time. Please don't waste your time, you know? But oh, and it's just, yeah.
And it is a journey. And that's what I love about this podcast series is that it is the art of becoming. It is about more and more and more of who you authentically are. And sometimes part of the journey, no, I want to say a lot of the times it's about unpacking all the stuff that somebody else gave to you that was and moving through these thresholds. And yes, it's scary, but you can do it. Is there any other thing that you would want to say to somebody who's in this journey, who's listening right now?
I would say to, really, really find deep forgiveness and grace for yourself, like so much compassion. I think part of why we don't give ourselves what we really want is because we have a lot of shame and around either not giving it to ourselves in the first place or feeling like we have to be perfect in order to take those steps. I mean, I think trying to be perfect stops more people than almost anything. Comparing our beginning steps to someone else's, mountaintop moments is the quickest way to stop yourself. And I think giving yourself the grace of being a beginner, making mistakes, being messy, and having so much compassion for your baby beginner steps is just so, so massive. And you're worthy of what you want. You're worthy of it. But no one's going to give it to you except for you.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And that's the hardest thing is it moves from battling others and what we think battling others to this internal battle. And when you can put that sword down and stop yourself and just allow it to come through, man, what's on the other side. And I still and I speak from a place of I'm still on journey with it. And I'm sure as well, like you're gonna next thing, just because it's here that there's still gonna be something else and something and being again giving yourself so much grace and willingness to embrace that journey.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this interview. Tell people about the new single, where they can find it, where they can hear it, where can they learn more about working with you?
Oh, thank you. I'm on Spotify. I'm on all music streaming platforms now. That was a big learning curve, but I did it. Good job. Yeah. So you can find me, Kristi Salerno, on pretty much all streaming devices, and Ooh Yeah Yeah is my single. So the more streaming that gets, 10% of the streams go to the Lakota Law Project, which is an amazing indigenous organization that protects the land and helps return stolen lands from indigenous people. So I love the the more support that song gets, the better. And then you can find me on Instagram. That's kind of where everything is. I have a website and all of that. I'm actually teaching in LA in person next week on Wednesday. And the theme of it is called Becoming. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. So I'll be at my friend's studio called Ceremony in Marina Del Rey, and it's a free community class, just gentle somatic work. So if anyone wants to be there who's in LA, so that's that.
Thank you so much for being here.
So my pleasure. You're so wonderful to talk to. You're just such a grounded, beautiful, wise voice, and I really appreciate you. Seriously. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like, share this episode with a friend. That way we can get it into the ears of people who need it the most. You can also visit my website at theartofbecoming.me. While there, you can go ahead and download my guide, Own That Shit. 3 ways to own who you are, own what you do, and own it out into the world. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.